Okay, Luke chapter 14. We're going to start. Actually, the parable of the supper is kind of towards the middle of the chapter. But we're going to start early and kind of pick up on, the what, when, where type thing. That's one of the things our questions always ask us is what's the background? What led to Jesus giving these parables? What normally leads to Jesus giving a parable, a physical story with a spiritual meaning? Life experiences, things that they do in their life, Jesus would take and make a spiritual application. Same thing we can do today. So that's what we need to do today, is to see what Jesus taught and how we can apply this to us today, just like he did for them back then. This parable of the banquet is a story of a feast, a banquet, a party. I think probably we all could raise our hand that we've all been to a party. We all have been invited to someone's house. And so Jesus is using this normal way of life that we live and making a spiritual application. But let's look at what happens early in this chapter that kind of leads up to this life story. One Sabbath. We talk about the who, what, when, and where. This is important. One Sabbath. Now, what was significantly different about the Sabbath day for the Jews? No work. It was the Lord's day back then. That was in commemoration of the Lord resting when he had created everything. They rested too. This was the Sabbath. This was a holy day. All right? When he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, here we have this life experience where oftentimes they would go and eat out with each other. Well, we do too, don't we? We go and eat out. I know Ben's got plans. Ben number 2. He's got plans for today. We make plans. We make plans the day before. We do things like that. Ben Peirce is, if you're wondering who number 2 is. All right. When he went to dine at the house of the ruler of the Pharisees, they were watching him carefully. Were they checking out his clothes? What were they watching for? Okay. Mistakes. Sabbath day. Okay, we've got limitations, don't we? We got limitations on the Sabbath day. And looking for someone who says he's a man of God, who says he is the Son of God, slipping up. And they're watching. Do we do that today? I'm afraid so. I'm afraid we do scrutinize and watch people and see what they're doing, how they're doing things, and see if they'll slip up. Now, what are you thinking about if you're doing that? If you're watching for mistakes, if you're watching for that instead of listening to what he has to say, you're looking for something else. What are you doing? Yeah, that's one thing. So what's your motive? Besides missing out, your motive is completely different. You're there to trap. You've got a different motive or incentive in mind of, I don't like this person and I'd like to do something to them or get rid of them or something. They didn't like Jesus. He challenged them for what they were doing. Who were the Pharisees? The religious Jews, the ones who were supposed to be leading them. Jesus didn't like how they were teaching the people, the hypocrisy, the things they were doing and then doing something different. Listen to what I say, not what I do. And Jesus didn't like that. It needed to be a good example. And they didn't like him calling them on it. And here they decided, let's try to catch him on something. We call him on that. All right? Because Jesus called them on things, they're trying to catch him and call him on something else. Verse 2, and behold, there was a man before him who had dropsy. Anybody know what someone who has the dropsy is? I think of Weldon in the hospital. He's all swelled up. That's what it was, being swelled up. And so go down to Walgreens, get you a diuretic. In 10 days, you'll be fine. Oh, they didn't have a Walgreens? Is it physically changing of a body to have this dropsy, to have this swelling? It's very, very obvious that to the point you may not even recognize them. That's how bad this can be. So it's real obvious when you see someone that they know someone, this man is there. Have we noticed a pattern about what happens when the Jews gather together on the way to the synagogue, on the way to the temple? That's where all of the sick and lame people are, with their hand out, hoping for someone that's in a good mood, in a religious mood, and maybe some kindness. Well, give them a handout, help them out. Even there was times when they would gather around a pool, and every now and then the Spirit would do the waters of the pool, and the first one to reach in would be cured. All right, they would gather around this. They would do things. Remember the guy who couldn't ever get close enough because he was lame. He couldn't ever get close enough in time. We see these stories of their life during here. And this man who had the dropsy, you could see Jesus looking at them, and they're looking back at him, and this guy is standing right here that needs help. But remember, it's a Sabbath day. Can't do any healing, can't do any work. Let me take that back. Can't do any work. But what is healing? Let's look at this. And Jesus responded to the lawyers and Pharisees. First, we were talking about, they went to the house of the ruler of the Pharisees, and they're watching him, and who better to watch than someone who knows the law? All right, we got the lawyers here, we got the Pharisees that are pretty close in the same knowledge, and Jesus responded to them. Somebody looks at you, they're looking for a response. And Jesus did that. He noticed they're looking at him, what he's going to do. He's responding to this. He sees that they're watching. He responds to the lawyers and Pharisees saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Good question. Is it? It's lawful. Okay? Jesus doesn't really say that. He says, but I'll give you a scenario, a real life scenario that we probably all been through. Maybe not a well. And they remained silent. Then he took him and healed him and sent him away. He went ahead and did it anyhow. They didn't give any response. He went ahead and did it anyhow. And it was curious, sent him away. What has happened to all of the other, I think my voice is changing or something. What's happened to all of the other people that Jesus and the disciples heal? What happens? They don't leave their side. All of a sudden, if you got some terrible disease and you've been made whole, I think I'd stick around too. What's the purpose of miracles? Confirmation that this person is what? Has the power of God. God must be with this person. And if God is with this person, maybe you ought to listen to what they have to say. If God is with them. That's what's happened to all the prophets in the Old Testament. No different here. We see the power of God. We've got And then we've got a walking, talking, healing right in front of them all the time. And usually when they would walk around, this person would walk with them, and it was a constant reminder, this guy I've known for 40 years, and he's healed. There's a walking, talking miracle right there. But Jesus does something a little different. He sends him away. Jesus has got a little more that he wants to talk to him about. And he wants them to focus on him. Sends this man away. And he said to them, which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on the Sabbath day, would not immediately pull him out? But of course we would. I don't know how many times when I lived at home, and I'm sure it still happens, someone would call and say, your cows are out. And I'm afraid to say it happened more than once. The gate was down, the fence was down, the cows are out. And what do? Turn the TV on, watch the football game. No, we dropped everything and went out and took care of that. Well, we have a responsibility to our investment and to anybody else if they're out on the road to protect someone else. That's what you do. You don't wait till after services is over and then go get the cows in. But what if it's your own child? Of course. We would go do that. Here's this exception to the rule, or maybe it's not really breaking a rule if it's not wrong to heal. This is an act of God. Is an act of God actually working? That's kind of a gray area. We've already determined that's the healing is not, but here Jesus says, of course you would do this. Of course they would even do this. You do what you have to do. This is the real in life. That's what we do. You don't normally do that. You don't normally miss a service if your car breaks down. It breaks down and you have a blowout. It happens. People travel. People hydroplane. They're lucky that they didn't run off the road. That's life. Accidents happen. Things happen. That's what this is. Falling into having a son or even an animal. And even one of your animals you would go, because we have an investment, that's something important. Of course they understood this. And here's the reaction, verse 6. They could not reply to these things. They couldn't say, oh, of course we would do that, or no, of course we wouldn't do that. It's almost like the dilemma of John the Baptist. Remember? Why didn't you listen to him? Remember they debated, if we listened to him, why didn't we listen to him? And if we didn't listen to him, they feared the people because the people believed John was a prophet. Here's this catch-22. I can't say yes, I can't say no. Yes, ma'am?
Well, they also made some assumptions that someone was actually marked, but Jesus said it was actually a work. Maybe it was actually a gift. And then the other thing I was going to say is, in the world we live in today, you would want that person hanging around because we see so many silly things where, like, for 5 minutes they're healed because it's adrenaline, but then their body deteriorates and goes back. So that was confirmation that the healing was real, and it wasn't going to change. It wasn't a temporary something like that their magicians may have been able to pull off.
The word, when you said we make assumptions, I'm going to stop thinking after that, because they just hit me when you said that. We do that. Life, we make assumptions. We see something and we automatically go to this conclusion without knowing all of the facts, this is how I'm leaning anyhow, and we make an assumption. And you're exactly right, except about what people do. And Jesus saw that. Jesus saw that. Was the work they would think he was accused of doing necessary? Or was it something it could wait? We think about that. I hope I'm not making an assumption. We do this, and what Jesus did, of course you would do something that's an emergency. And that's what he classified, a son or an animal or something. That's life. It happens. There's exceptions. Then he tells this parable of the feast. Now he told a parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the place of honor, saying to them, before I go any further, I think of a wedding and a reception. And just so there's not any confusion, a lot of times we set up name tags on the tables of the wedding party or the bride and groom, his side, her side, in the places we want them, of course. But of course that's where everybody wants to sit. Everybody wants to sit up close, to be the close one. Of course, that's where you see and be up front and close to what's happening. And let somebody else sit in the back. So what happens? People get there early. They get there early to get the spot that they want. But here he says, this is nothing new. We can see that this happened way back when, of people thinking like this, life happening. When you are invited, here's the story Jesus is telling. If you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him, and he who invited you both will come and say to you, give place to this person. And then you will begin with shame, embarrassment, get up, and what's left? If at that point someone distinguished comes in and you have to move, what's left? The back row, where you didn't want to be in the first place. So I don't want to be there. I want to be up front. But that's where you end up being. We all see this. We all can picture this, and that's how Jesus is a great storyteller. But when you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher, move up closer. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at table with you. Now, what led to this story? What were they doing back here? He told a parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the places of honor. The Jews, the Pharisees, are watching Jesus, but Jesus is also watching them, watching how they are thinking, how they are acting, the assumptions they are making. Oh, I can sit up here. I'm good. I'm a good friend. Then you find out you might not be as good a friend as you thought you were. And then you get embarrassed. All right. So, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. All right. Let's read on. And he said to the man who invited him, when you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends. Hang on a second. There's a difference between having a meal with a friend and showing an act of kindness. If you're doing something with a friend, next time will they say, well, it's my turn and I'll pay. I mean, we all do that. But when someone that needs your help and can't pay you back, then you treat them differently. You treat them with kindness, along with friendship. And he's making a difference here. He says this is how you really should be showing an act of kindness. But Because if you're doing this with friends, it doesn't cost you anything. It's almost like it's a wash. I spent money now, I get extra next time. You know, it's a wash. It's nothing. I really didn't sacrifice anything. But if you show kindness to someone that they can't pay you back, you've given them a piece of yourself that you're not getting back. And that's a kindness that Jesus is trying to help them understand how they should be treating people, how they should be showing kindness, the kind of example of kindness. Jesus showed kindness, feeding the 5,000, healing the sick, doing wonderful things, giving them the words of life, of how they should be living. Yes, ma'am?
Well, the first one is kind of a tit for tat or quid pro quo, but the second one is an act of service, and we are to be servants.
Right. And Jesus lived that. We see the Pharisees saying that, but not living that. And a lot of times you can tell by their actions, and this is it. This is the actions they were showing, inviting those that could pay back, that would give back. And he says, this is how you should be inviting friends or brothers, your relatives or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and you be repaid. Verse 13, but when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just. A good thing, a good life lesson for us, that we can show kindness. How much of us have been, I'm raising both hands on this one, have been blessed more than I need? Yeah, all of us. Both hands. So why don't we, if we got more than what we need, why can't we bless those who are unfortunate? We can. We get into the pattern of this is mine. And this is yours, this is mine. We do this. I worked hard for this. This runs through our head, this mentality of, how many of us have a job that was around 200 years ago? Maybe Larry. It was the same back then. Oh, it was? We have jobs that didn't exist 200 years ago, much less 1,000 years ago. Oh, Terry and Dwayne and Ben. Yeah, there's always been bankers. Tax collectors. Oh, not really. But most of us have jobs that were non-existent. What does that mean? Are we lucky? Are we blessed to have them? Yes. Every job that we have, we are blessed to have. That doesn't mean it doesn't take work to do that. Yes, it does take work to do that, but we are blessed to have that and to make what we have and to have what we have. We are truly blessed. And I think Jesus continues to talk about those of us who realize how truly blessed we are, how kind we can be to build that crown in heaven one day. When one of those who reclined at table with him heard these things, he said to him, "Blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God." That sounds good. Blessed, fortunate. And what's the kingdom of God? The church. The church is the kingdom of God. And he says, blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. Those who are in the church, blessed are they if they're a part of that. Yeah, that's great. That's really a great phrase to say. What Jesus has to say. A man once gave a great banquet and invited many. And at the time for the banquet, he sent his servant out to say to those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." Is that our invitation song? All things are ready. Come to the feast. I think this is where this come from. That song come from. All things are ready. The cook has just informed me. It's ready. Bring them in. Set them down. A feast. How many of us, boy, it's changing. How many of us had a feast during Thanksgiving and Christmas? How wonderful was that? To share with each other that. And to say, oh, those potatoes sure were good. I'm looking at a certain girl over here. Oh, that dessert. Oh, that was good. Oh, it was all so wonderful. That's what a feast is. That's what a feast is, to share and show kindness and see how wonderful God has blessed us. A man once gave a great banquet and invited many. At the time of the banquet, his servant says, it's ready. Everything's ready. Come, everything is now ready. But they all alike began to make excuses. All right, remember we started out this chapter talking about excuses. What excuse is going to be good enough? We all make excuses. Terry and I were talking about after that lesson about what's going to be a good excuse. And Terry says, a good reason. We have a good reason, which is a good excuse, if you've got one. So we go through a list of good excuses, or maybe let's take the good off of it, and we'll see excuses that were given. The first one said to him, I have bought a field, and I must go out and see it. Please have me excused. Or please realize I can't RSVP. What's the purpose of an RSVP? To let them know that you're coming. I'm coming. Or you let them know, I'm sorry, I can't come. And then you wonder, why can't they come? Well, at least they said something. Yes, ma'am?
But who buys a field without looking at it? So we should have already looked at it.
Okay.
It's making an excuse. Like, I got to go look at it, right?
Well,
Most of us already probably, if we're going
Yeah.
to buy something, we probably already looked at
yeah.
it. Except maybe if you ordered it off the internet, which was not the case here, right? So his
Probably.
excuse didn't hold any water because chances are he had already looked at it. So
Yeah.
this was just, well, I bought it, now I need to go see it again, right? I mean, that's how lame our excuses are, God. You know?
And
So, I mean, it's
what was the hurry, maybe?
yeah, you already bought it, you'd already seen it, why didn't you go right there?
Is it going anywhere? Is it like the child fell into the well or the animal fell into the well? There was immediate dire danger there? I'm trying to think, I can't think that land's going to be there. It's not going to change. I might go look at it again and make plans, but that can wait.
Well, I'm pretty sure he already knew he had the invitation, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like it was the first invite, because he went out to tell those that the feast was ready that had been invited.
Right, had been invited. This was something that you
They already knew about it.
knew about it.
Yeah. So they prioritized looking at that field over having dinner with the important person they invited.
Okay. So when you hear, what kind of excuse is that? Have you ever heard the word lame? Pretty sorry. When you hear that excuse, what is the guy giving the banquet thinking?
You're not interested, you don't care.
You don't care about me and what I'm trying to do for you or anything like that. I mean, it's obvious the excuse we give tells the one inviting something.
I'll say it back, or it goes to a lot of trouble and expense
Oh.
and effort, and you just want to make sure you first have enough of them and that they will enjoy it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of planning and a lot of execution and a lot of, like I say, a lot of resources. This isn't, I mean, you wouldn't do it just to serve. Got to be careful. McDonald's, but or that's the joke I give when my girls want to go somewhere. Where do you want to go? Oh, McDonald's. Oh, Yeah, you're right. I'm just kidding. But when you give an excuse that is so lame that it could wait, it's not like it's going anywhere, the land's going anywhere. I'm thinking, they don't want to come. And we see later on, after a couple more excuses, you start seeing the attitude, the temper of the host. You start seeing that. We'll read that here in a minute. Please have me excused. 19. And another one said, I have 5 yoke of oxen. I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to examine them. Please have me excused. Okay? Are they running down the road and about to be run over by a chariot? You know, or no, I just bought them. I need to go look at them. How are they standing? And the host's going, can't you wait and do that? Here's another lame excuse. And then the third one, please have me excused, verse 20. Another one says, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. It didn't say +1 on the invitation. It didn't say that. So I'm married and I'm completely changed. And I can't come because I'm no longer the one you invited. I'm +1. Or she said no. He wouldn't even do that. That would be a better excuse if she said no, I can't go, than for him to say, I've been married and therefore I can't come. Yes, ma'am?
Never really thought about this before, but all 3 of those excuses focus on the physical world. Never thought about that before.
Well, that's what this is supposed to be, real life. What do we do in our real life? Do we allow things to keep us from being here during our services? Do we let things of this world like this, not in emergency like Jesus did, or give an example of falling into a well, or something that's dangerous. We've called off because of a tornado warning. We've called off because of bad weather. We're trying to keep people safe. That was an emergency. We did that. And those are exceptions to the rule, but he's not giving any exceptions. So these excuses aren't exceptions. These aren't emergencies. The whole point of this whole chapter is when we think of what we do and what we say, we tell the host something. We're telling those who are inviting us something if we refuse. I remember as a kid being invited some kind of party, and I was a teenager, and I decided I didn't want to go. My dad had a little sit down, talk to me. He said, you may not want to go, but what will all your friends say whenever you don't show up, or you call and say, I'm not coming? What excuse are you going to make? And I realized then, I can't just think of what Doug wants. Someone is showing me kindness, I need to respond to that. To not think of what Doug wants, but what... And so we learn these life lessons in life, in our youth, in our adult age, of things. We make mistakes. Guilty. Made mistakes. Can we learn from them? Yes, we can. I hope we would learn from them. I hope we were wise enough to learn not to think like that anymore. And that's what Jesus is trying to help them overcome, is this selfish way of thinking. Especially the Pharisees and the Sadducees and everybody there. We need to show kindness. And Jesus was the living example of kindness, of what all He did for others. And here He gives these stories. So, The servant came and reported all these things to the master. Then the master of the house became angry and said to the servant, "Go out quickly to the streets and lanes of the city and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." And the servant said, "Sir, we have commanded, what you have commanded has been done, and still there is room." And the master said to the servant, "Go out to the highways and hedges and compel people to come in that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those men who were invited shall taste my banquet." We see they'll never been in his door again. Those who made these lame excuses, those who showed selfishness when he was trying to show them kindness. Okay, here's our spiritual side of it now. God has done so much for us, showed so much kindness to us, offered so many things to us. Will we be selfish and say, "I don't want it"? He'll move on. Move on to someone else who does want it. Here this story tells us of the mind of God. How he feels when we make excuses. Is it going to be good enough? We've got about 4 minutes left in class. Yes, ma'am. Or 5. Terry's gone.
Contrast for me is like the first three excuses, they were invited, so they knew about it. And they could have planned differently. I mean, weddings don't just happen like, I mean, I guess some might, but back then I don't think they just happened like, let's go to the courthouse and get married, right? So the host would have known, he had time to tell the host, could I bring one more person, right? So the saying, prior planning prevents poor performance comes to mind for me. You know, like all three of those first excuses could have been done differently. So it's like setting priorities, and then in the last part, those people were in need. So people that think they're self-sufficient in today's world or in the world in general, they might not, I mean, we've all heard stories about people that don't think they need God, but the people that were poor and traveling and had a greater need than those that were settled in, you know, they responded, you know, and so it kind of like, just this morning I was reading anyway, about if you, you know, if you say this day I'm going to go do this, this, and this, things when we started sent out, you know, but what you should say if the Lord wills, you know, and it kind of goes hand in hand. You know, the first three excuses were all about themselves in this world, but the latter people were flexible and they listened and they had a need. So if we think we're self-sufficient, we need to think again.
What do you think the host would have said to the guy who just got married? Can I bring my new wife? I'd be tickled for you to bring. I'm the host. I'd be tickled. We'll celebrate you. We'll celebrate this marriage. This is a happy thing. And God is the same way. We say, can we come? Can we bring some more? Of course you can. I have a friend that needs salvation. I have someone a family member who needs salvation. Of course bring them along. That's what the host was telling them. We got plenty of room. We got plenty of food. We've got plenty of all of this for everybody. Of course bring them in. Yes.
Yeah, well, and the host said, okay, the people I invited don't want to come. I'm going to go find people who can just do it. You know, he didn't let it spoil. He didn't throw it in the trash. He said, fine. I'll go find people that will appreciate what I've done.
We see the gospel was first given to the Jews and then to the Gentiles. When they refused, we'll go out to the Gentiles. A fulfillment of this little story, this little parable right here.
So I guess when we get rejected trying to tell people about the Lord, we need to have this host's attitude with, well, I'm going to go find somebody that is responsible. I'm not here to...
Because our Father is the host of the great banquet.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can learn from that. We do. We see somebody, I say, oh, I'm going to do that at my next party. Have you ever done that? You see someone, some little idea, some little game, oh, I'm going to pick up on that and do it at my next party. Or show some act of kindness, oh, I'm going to do that too. That's what God wants us to pick up on. That we pick up on this in kindness and show that to others less fortunate than we are.
And I think, we are the person he sent out. And then he said, go remind the people. And then he said, okay, go invite these people. And he said, go invite more people. That's our job to invite. It's his job.
I think that's another reason God made us have the ability to be parents. That we know what a father feels like with their child, or a mother feels like with their child. A parent feels like. We see our Father in heaven, how he treats us, loves us unconditionally, like we love our children. Thank you.